Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. So as Mason said, I'm going to cover part two of the advanced billing and invoicing features in AppCall. You can see what we covered in part one, and you can see what we're going to cover in part two. We're going to talk about generating lots of invoices very quickly and with bulk invoicing. We're going to then talk about accepting payments using QuickBooks if you're syncing up with QuickBooks Online. Then how you would go about customizing a leads file, and we'll talk about what their leads files are in a moment. And finally, and probably the most complex part of this, is going to be automating a merged flat fee billing workflow. So AppCall, if you're using flat fees and you have multiple people working on elements that combine into that flat fee, AppCall has a great way of automating the flow such that it creates the flat fees automatically and automatically merges in the constituent billing items. So we're going to cover that. First, bulk processing of invoicing. So this is a way to generate all your invoices for a month or whatever period it is you use for invoicing with a few clicks. When you generate invoices, what AppCall will do is use whatever settings you had for that client for this month. Means you don't have to go to each one and look at it. You can also, after you've generated the invoices, if you make changes, trying to make edits or whatever, you can easily include those updates by selecting and clicking your button. And then finally, as part of this process, send out all of your invoices to all of your clients with a couple clicks using some predefined templates that you've set out. So let's go through that process. I'm just going to flip to AppCall now. So in AppCall, bulk invoicing is done as one might expect from the invoices page module. And you'll see on the left, there are three buttons: generate, update, and email invoices, all corresponding to those three things I just talked about. Clicking on the generate invoices button brings up the box, which shows you a list of all your clients that have outstanding billing items that are to be billed. And you can just, to create those invoices, just click generate and it'll generate them very quickly. If you have a large number of invoices, you want to filter out what you're going to generate at a particular time. There are a couple ways to do that. You can start typing text in the box up here and it'll filter by the client name. Or another way to do it, if maybe you want to only generate invoices associated with attorneys that are responsible for that client, is to use a default attorney selection here. So you can pick a default attorney and it'll just generate invoices for clients that have that attorney. Now, you may not be familiar with this particular setting. It's actually done in the contacts page. Let me just flip to that. So in the contacts page, for a given client, there is a field in the client contact record where you can specify the default attorney. And the purpose of that is really for invoicing. It's a little bit hidden. I'm going to open up the page here. Actually, you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And that's where the default attorney is set. So if you want to set this up and you want to generate invoices just for one attorney that's responsible for a client, you can do that. Obviously, one attorney can be responsible for multiple clients. Okay. Go back to invoices. I'm going to clear that out. I'm also going to add a start date. And I'm going to generate. And AppCall will run through each invoice, use the settings that you last used for that client, and create the invoice. And then you did it. So you can imagine this can save you a whole bunch of time. If you have a whole bunch of invoices generated, you don't have to open up a new invoice, click add, enter the information, and click save and wait, blah, blah, blah. This just does it very quickly. So now, as I said before in the slides, typically what will happen at this point, once you've generated them, is you'll have them reviewed typically by an attorney to make sure that it all looks good. So I'm going to quickly make a tweak to one of these invoices. You notice I click on the dollar sign there to go to all the billing items associated with this particular invoice. So if I wanted to tweak this, it looks like we spent too much time doing this. We're going to tweak it down, maybe make that 0.5. And then if I go back to the invoices, I don't have to open up the invoice, click apply changes and save it and all that. I can just select the invoice I want to update and click update. And this will basically do the same process as if you open the invoice, looked at it, and then saved it. It'll incorporate any updates that have occurred. So if you have a whole bunch of invoices to update, that's really going to save quite a bit of time. All right, finally then for this is emailing the invoices. So you can select all the invoices you want to send, click on the email invoices button, click email, and that'll send them out right there and then. It'll also set the status of the invoice to sent. This is different from syncing it with QuickBooks, which we'll chat about briefly in a moment. The template, AppCall comes with a default invoice emailing template, which you can look at by clicking on the edit template link here. And this it basically builds it to whatever the email address of the remit to in the invoice, which would typically be your client. And so with your client, for example, associated with a client record, you have an email address. And if this is what's specified in your remit to, this is where the email's going. So you can see in the case of these two invoices, they're both going to that's my work address. That's my, but that's where that's specified. You can obviously have the remit to address, the remit to address being different from the client if you want, as you well know. And that's the email address of that record, which it'll be sent to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just email it. No, I didn't show you the template. Let me show you the template quickly here. I did show it to you, excuse me. In here we have remit to, it's from, and let me back up a second. I said that wrong. It's from the remit to email, which is your law firm, and it to the bill to email, whatever that is. Excuse me. They're wrong. We also CC the client intake email address. So we store the emails outbound, and you can use form substitution in this email if you want. So the subject line is comprised of the invoice date and the law firm name, but you can obviously edit this as you desire, make changes, and then save it as a new template. Use that. All right. So if I go ahead and then send these out, I can just click like that, and I successfully sent them. If you just give me a second here, I'll show you what this invoice email looks like. Just flip my sharing. So this is the email that was sent out. So what goes in here is what's in that template, and the invoice of the email is attached. So that's bulk emailing of invoices. If you do a lot of invoices, it can significantly shrink the amount of time it takes each month to prepare all those invoices. Okay, moving on now to accepting payments via QuickBooks. So the main benefit of this, if it makes sense for you in terms of your business process, your back-end accounting, is it accelerates customer payments because it makes it much simpler for them to enter a credit card. And what this does, and this only works obviously if you're using QuickBooks Online and you go to AppCall connected to it, is it adds a link to the QuickBooks Online payment page at the end of the invoice. QuickBooks supports all credit cards and ACH, and you should know that we do not store in AppCall any financial information. It's all stored in QuickBooks. So it's totally handled by them. So they accept the payment, they process the credit card, they charge the 2.X% or whatever it is if using credit cards, and they get the payment. Now, payments that are accepted in QuickBooks obviously can be synced back into AppCall, which keeps AppCall up to date. And this will be a fairly normal way of doing processing in AppCall if you're using QuickBooks. Create the invoice in AppCall, you send it to the customer via AppCall, you then sync the invoice to QuickBooks, QuickBooks accept the payments, and then the payments come back to AppCall via the syncing process, and everything's kept up to date. Your accounts receivable on both AppCall and QuickBooks are up to date. So to set that up, pretty straightforward, but there are some things you need to do in QuickBooks. So I'm logged into QuickBooks here. This is our Outcalls test account. If you want to accept payments, you know how you're doing this, I'll just show you where it is. Here's one way of getting to it. Click on the settings page here, go to your account, settings, my company link, and then go down to the sales tab right here. And then in the middle of the page here, we have accept online payments. You click here, then it's going to go walk you through the setup process. As you can see, it accepts most of the major payment methods. So once you've done that in QuickBooks, then, just now, thank you. You need to pop back into AppCall and go to the AppCall settings page, go to the billing tab, scroll down, and you'll see there's actually 4 options here. These 2 allow you to fine tune whether or not you're going to accept credit cards and or ACH payments from QuickBooks. Basically, we pass that option on to QuickBooks. And this says whether or not you're going to include the payment link on the AppCall invoice. Normally, you would just select all 3 like that. Now, to add the payment link to the AppCall invoice, you have to sync it with QuickBooks. Let me just do that now. So I'm going to go to this, back to the invoices page, these 2 invoices I created. If I look at the invoice now, there's nothing at the bottom here. So if I now sync these invoices to QuickBooks, first it's going to ask me to connect to QuickBooks. This is something you would do once per session, probably know. Syncing all the individual billing items. There is an option in AppCall just to send over a summary to QuickBooks. What I've done here is I actually have it syncing the individual line items. Added them. And at the bottom here, you can see there's the link. And clicking on it takes you to a QuickBooks page. Now, as we haven't set up the payment screen, the payment method in QuickBooks, you get this kind of generic thing. But if you had it set up, they could enter their credit card information or ACH information directly here. So that's pretty straightforward and makes it, as I said, fairly easy and quick to get payments from customers. Okay, a couple questions. Stephanie. It's been a long time since I tried this, but will the generate invoices only generate an all matters invoice group by matter with a single invoice number? So Stephanie, when you generate an invoice in bulk, as I just did, it will use whatever options you had set for that particular client. So if for one client you had an all matters invoice with one number, and another client you had grouped by matter with a different invoice number per matter, it'll adhere to that. It'll do a different settings for each client. Okay, that makes sense. Janice, can you see the matter number, reference numbers when generating billable time invoices? So if you're referring to the invoices page here, it's not shown. And the reason it's not shown normally is because more often than not, an invoice may have more than one matter associated with it. So we typically don't show the matter number. You can't see the matter number for a given invoice. I guess potentially could show it if an invoice only had one matter in it, but more often than not, they don't. Unfortunately, the answer to that question is no. You can, by clicking on this link here, go to the billing items page. You can obviously see the matter at that point, or you can open the matter or click on the PDF itself. Of course, it's probably quicker. See it right here, but it's not available in this list. Okay, moving on. You see, there are more questions. Okay, Janice, the follow-up. Can you see the matter reference number when generating billable? What? I with another one here. From David, can I use AppCall QuickBooks to collect a retainer for a client? Good question. Unfortunately, QuickBooks does not have a standard way of storing retainers. We've looked and we've searched for it and we can't find one. If you know of a standard way to do this, let us know. We'll see if we can make it work. So managing retainers currently typically has to be done separately, both in AppCall and QuickBooks. There's no clear way for us to sync a retainer to QuickBooks, fortunately. Next topic. Leads files. So leads file, LEDES, which stands for Legal Electronic Data Exchange Standard. These are files that are used to electronically transfer invoices between law firms. Pretty much everybody uses them now if it's a big company. So I would guess that most people have experience with them. Even though it's a standard, even though these files are standardized, clients have a habit, it seems, of needing customization. They want to treat them a little bit differently. So AppCall offers the way to customize the information that goes into a leads file to meet client requirements. For example, they may want you to translate matter references from what you have to what they have. They may be using custom timekeeper codes, things like that. So our goal here was to stop the need for hand editing the leads file, which people do. I do this, finding as that is, they have doing that. But that's our goal. Leads file is actually a text file. Let me show you what one looks like. I'm going to flip now to back to AppCall. By default, and you can't really stop it, AppCall will generate leads files. There are certain requirements that are placed upon us before you can generate a leads file. For example, you have to specify an invoice start date, which isn't something AppCall required, but if you want a leads file, you have to. But if you look at a leads file, it's just a text file with like a spreadsheet where they have they have pipe separators and commas at the end of things. Not commas. They just use new lines or these special characters to indicate the end of a line. You can see it has the information that's in our billing items. This is a matter reference number. This is a timekeeper code. PT means patent attorney, I think. Plus all the various financial information. So if I needed to customize that, we customize a number of the different fields. And sorry, go here. And here they are. Now, this information is in our support articles. Don't feel you need to write this down early. So there are a number of columns in that leads file which can be modified by setting up information in AppCall. For the most part, we'll use matter custom fields to do it. So if you don't want to use the standard field, you can use an alternate custom field. So attorney ref is a good example. So the law firm matter ID, that's the law firm assigned matter identifier. We just pull that from the matter attorney ref, which kind of makes sense. If for whatever reason the client wants you to use something different, you can create a matter custom field called leads billing ref and use that instead. And I'm going to show you how that works in just a second. There are also various other fields you can translate as well, including that timekeeper code. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Back to AppCall. In order to do this, you need to go to the settings page and make sure, Joe, where you got that open? Hopefully you've got a custom field to do this. You add matter custom field with the exact name that's specified in the text, in the support text there. So in this case, I want to generate a leads file where one matter has a special translated attorney ref because that was the client's requirement. So I create a custom field called leads billing ref. Doesn't matter which slot it's in, can be in any one. I can then go into the matter. And I'm going to use this particular matter, just grins. Scroll down, find that field, custom field, type in the translated name, save it. Now, if I go back to my invoices, which are here, I'm going to use the update invoice button just as quicker. Not letting me change it because it's sent, because I emailed it. So I'm just going to set the status back to pending just so I can modify it. That was set to send automatically, incidentally, because I emailed the invoice. It would also, and I synced it to QuickBooks too, which also said. So I'm going to manually force that back to pending. Click on update. Updated it. Now, if I look at the leads file, you can see where it did have our internal name. It's now got the client's name for the matter. Also, it's one other thing that seems like people like to do. They don't like to use the standard AppCall standard way of translating a role into a leads timekeeper code. If you want to specify your own timekeeper code, you can open up person's or timekeeper's contact record. Scroll down to this thing's called leads code, enter the custom code. I'm just going to put YZ here. And that will, once it's done, if I go back to the invoice now and regenerate it, again, using the update, it's quicker. Recreating files, and then click on this. One can see that David's timekeeper timekeeper code has now been specified as YZ, which is not a standard leads code, but hey, that's what clients like. So that's customizing leads files. You should be able to, with all the capabilities we put in here, get the leads file into a state where you don't have to hand edit it. If not, if you're still hand editing your leads files, let us know. We'll see if we can figure out a way to not have that happen, because that's just tedious and very error. Okay. Final topic. Creating a workflow. So merge flat fees, if you haven't used them, are basically flat fee billing items, and it's a fixed cost. It's not an hourly thing. It's actually a roll up of people's fee billing items, which are hourly things. So you may negotiate, okay, for an office action response or another log file, it's $2,000 or something. And that's the fee you're going to charge the client. And you want to manage that behind the scenes. You want to track what's going on with individuals and how much time they're spending on it, and automatically allocate any gap between what the flat fee is and what people's time is, so that you can pay them appropriately. So AppCall can automate that. So it should save you a whole bunch of time. So you set up the workflow. The system automatically generates the container flat fee. And then as people work on it and add their own billing item, they are rolled up into that merged flat fee. And as I say, you can specify a budget. You don't actually have to. You could just have it be the sum of everybody's time. More often than not, though, if it's a flat fee, that means it's a fixed cost to the customer. AppCall can automatically adjust people's time to match the flat fee, and it does it on a proportional basis, and I'll show you that in a bit. Before we jump into that, Janice asked a question: can you customize lead files per client? Each client file has their own requirements. Sorta. The customization I showed you, a lot of it is on a matter by matter basis, which would be obviously per client. The timekeeper codes customization, however, is per timekeeper. So that would not be per client particular. Okay, hope you answer your question. All right, let's dive into this. back to app call. All right, so I've set up here a dummy receive non-final office action workflow for client Altera. I'm going to click on this family tree diagram thing here just to show you what the workflow looks like. I don't know if you knew this existed, but this is like a graphical view of a workflow that exists in AppCom. So you get the non-final, you receive it. Typically, this would be in an XML file or e-office action, which then triggers a respond to non-final 3-month deadline. And out of that, we get a couple of actions. Somebody has to create a draft. The attorney has to, and then the final office action, the paralegal for the matter, should file it. There's a couple of things that roll up into responding in this simplified workflow. That's not what individuals would do particularly into responding to a non-final. That's the workflow. And the way this works is when this task is triggered, it generates the sort of a flat fee billing item, which is empty. And then as people work on it, as people work on these two tasks, their time is automatically integrated into that. To set up the flow, and then to trigger the actual billing item, what you have to do is set up a billing item template, because that's what's used to trigger the new billing item or create the new billing item. So AppCall has billing item templates, and it's available in the templates field. Templates in the menu here. Let me just switch my view here. So these are billing item templates. So they are used to create billing items. You can use them manually, or you can use them as a result of a task triggering. But what I'm going to use is this one. Respond to non-US non-final action. And it's triggered. Billing items aren't triggered by anything. They are triggered by the task. I'll show you that. So I misspoke there. But let me just walk down what these fields are. You can specify who the task owner, who is the owner of the billing item. In this case, it's whoever runs the task that triggered it. What is it? It's a flat fee. And these are the options you set up to enable this automatic merging. The first one says this is a merged billing item, which is a merged flat fee, which means it's a container that includes other things. And then there's a couple of checkboxes here. This one will be unchecked if this one is checked. You can merge billing items for the same task, or what I'm going to do, you can automatically merge billing items for any task in the same workflow, which means even though the billing item was triggered by the billing item was generated from template triggered by this task, any billing items that are associated with any task in the workflow automatically roll up into it, which is what you want. And then this checkbox says, when merged billing items are added, automatically adjust the items to match the budget. So I have a budget down here of $2,000 for this particular office action. And so if people do work that exceeds $2,000, it's going to automatically adjust them down prorated basis to hit 2,000. We'll do that in a bit. One other thing that you'll find useful, I think, is you can connect templates. For example, if you have a template for responding to an office action, you can automatically generate a billing item. And in this case, I'm generating, this is bogus because it's assuming you're 1 month late, but I'm assuming you're 1 month late in responding. You can add a USPTO fee that's automatically added at the same time you create this particular merge flat fee item. Again, can save you time. If you have fees that are associated with activities like filing, you can set up templates that are linked to other templates to automatically add those fees. Okay, a lot of stuff going on here. I understand it's best to try this out and see what you work for yourself, but let's go ahead and do it. All right, so now I'm going to go, let me close some of this, cancel. I'm going to go to the matter screen. I'm going to open up this matter, which currently has, I think, no billing items associated with it. Right, there's nothing going on. And I am going to add manually add this task, the receive task. Now, normally this would happen as a result of importing an XML or updating a matter. Put a date first. Oh, hang on, one thing before I do that. I forgot a step. So I said how you create the template. What I didn't show you is how you connect it to a task. So if you've got a template and you want it to be created when a task is triggered, what you have to do is go to the task, which is this one here. And then all the way down the bottom, it says, now admins only can do this. Generate a billing item from the template. There's the template name when the task changes to open, which it would be typically what you do. So this is the link between tasks and billing items right here. It's done in the task type. This means whenever this task is generated, generate this billing item from this template. And as I had the fee billing item template associated with this template, it's going to generate that one too. So let's go ahead and do that. Go. Save. So now I'm creating the receive task, which is going to generate response task, which is going to generate billing. And you can see that little yellow thing popped up right there, which indicates that billing items were generated as a result of that, that activity. So now, if I go to the billing items for this matter, you can see I got a flat fee, which has got nothing in it yet. And I have my somewhat bogus extension fee because we're going to respond in 3 months for $220. These US PTO fee templates, incidentally, are set up somewhat automatically. We could just extract them from the PTO. You don't have to enter these manually. So you just press a button in the templates page and it'll import all of these US PTO fees for you. So there we go. So we've got our containers now, nothing in this one. So now if I go back to my matter, and I've got my tasks for my workflow. Adrian is going to work on creating the draft and John is going to file it. So I'm just going to enter a couple of billing items to simulate work on those activities. So Adrian works on the draft, done, clicks on add a billing item. Say he spent 5 hours on it. Enter that. And the other thing pops up that tells me this was automatically merged into a flat fee billing. That just lets you know what's going on. I'm going to do the same thing here for John. Adrian's name is popping up in this box because that's what I'm logged in at. If I was logged in, John's name would pop up here as well. Let's say John took half an hour to do it. And you can see there was merged in. You can imagine you got a whole bunch of people doing work and they're entering their billing items and they're automatically merged in. Makes it, yeah. Now, if I go to the billing items page for this, just refresh this. We now have $2,000. Now you'll notice that when I entered those items, they didn't add up to $2,000. If I click on the flat fee link there, it brings me the billing item edit page for merge flat fees, and you can see what it did. So it's got the 2 component entries, what they actually billed, and then how the system adjusted it in order to match $2,000, which was the budget specified in it. So that happens automatically and it's prorated. So it's proportional to the amount of time or the amount of dollars actually that each person contributes to this item. So if Adrian has 75% of the dollars relative to John, they'll get 75% of the adjustment. That makes sense. And that's auto adjusted. It is possible if you want to do something different than that to adjust it manually. To do that, either in the template or in the actual billing item itself, turn off automatic merging. So if I save that, now that's going to allow me to tweak the adjustment myself if I want to. So now I bring this up and there's some extra controls in here. So if I don't like that adjustment, I'm going to give this amount to John. I'm clicking the plus and minus here, and then I'm going to give the rest. Sorry, give that amount to Adrian and give the rest to John. So you can tweak it yourself. And you can also do the adjustment using build hours if you want. You can tweak the hours. Typically you wouldn't do that. You would actually do it. You just let the system. So that's how that works. Now, if I go to invoices, and I am going to add I just want to show you what it looks like in an invoice. Now, the default item date for any merge fee that's created from a task is the task response date, which was 3 months out from here. So I'm actually going to have to extend this way out in order to include the items that were created. That's why I'm doing that. Show adjustments. Apply changes. So here's how it looks in the invoice. Just go to total, flat fee total. If you do want to show some of the details that went on, there are a couple options for that. There's a show merged flat fee details. If I select that and apply changes, you can see it shows you who contributed to this. We actually had a request from somebody who wanted to show the actual hours worked by each individual. So you can show that too if you want. If you want to show that, you also have to have the hours checkbox check. Like that. Then you can see it shows you what hours are contributed. Normally you wouldn't do that, but we did have the request, so we added it. One other thing that you may or may not be aware of, when looking at an invoice like this, you can actually modify the allocation if you've enabled it, if it's not auto adjust directly from the invoice. So if you're reviewing an invoice, you're in the turning of an invoice, you can actually tweak things right here if you want. So if I were to, we're going to draw Adrian a bit, and then I'm going to come down here and tweak John to an adjustment. That's pretty generous, actually. That'll update the information right here. The line turns yellow when you do that to indicate that there's been, and you'll need to apply changes. Okay, and that's basically how it's done. That's all the material I was intending to cover today. If there's any other questions, let's see, one or two more which I'll answer now. Please put them in the chat. So Shazina asks, can we customize the generation of billing item by client? If we want a billing item to be generated for client A only, not other clients, how can you do that? The way you would do that is in the task type that is triggered, you would have to say, you'd have to add, and let me give you maybe I can make this a bit more concrete. In the task type that's triggered, you would add another trigger event. Oh, I've opened this twice. I'll find it in a minute. There it is. You would add another trigger while a specific field in the matter contains a specific right. Contains whoever. So you can. It takes a bit of setup, but you can do it. What you end up doing is creating a special task type for that client, and then you associate the appropriate billing item template with that custom task type. That's how you would do that. June asks, can you show an example of generating an invoice by matter? Sure. So in the options up here, so there's a couple ways of doing that. If you want to generate an invoice just for a specific matter, you can pick the matter and generate it. And that will generate a single invoice for a single matter. If you want to generate an invoice for all your matters, but you want one section and one invoice number per matter, you would do it this way. So that generates one invoice and multiple matters in the invoice, but each matter has its own section and its own number and can be paid separately, which would be a typical way of doing it. There is another option, which we talked about at the part 1 of the advanced billing and invoicing, where you can actually specify a report to select the matters that are included in an invoice. And that might be useful in certain circumstances. So there's a few ways of doing that. Michael asks, if you are importing your time entries from another program, can you use the merge flat fee feature? You can, but you got to get the tasks right. You have to include the task ID, which has some complexities to it, but you can do it, but you got to get the tasks right. Otherwise it won't roll up. The only way we can roll it up is if we have a task ID. So you have to make the tasks match. It can be done. Contact us if you want help with that, but it does make the creation of your import spreadsheet a little more complicated. Now you can, I failed to point out, of course, you can manually merge billing items. So I can select a couple of, they got to be on the same matter. I can select a couple of items and then merge them. So you can certainly do that by hand. Okay. Bradley asks, are there any plans to add adjustable options for the items that get pushed to QuickBooks so they don't come over the same categorizations? You can, for QuickBooks, currently we do QuickBooks services or categorizations based on the billing type, as opposed to the billing item. And that's actually set up in the settings module. Billing. So you can map the various app call billing types to specific things in QuickBooks, but you can't do it on a billing item by billing item basis, but you can certainly do it this way. All right, great. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time for joining us for this webinar. If you have any further questions, do not hesitate to reach out to support. We love to get your, it's how we make the product better. Thank you.